Hello, everybody. Welcome to the world of Formula One with Delucia Daniels and myself. 15 races to go, a 40 odd point gap in the championship. Yet everyone is already talking about, well, team orders. Who's going to jump first? Will it be Ferrari? Will it be Mercedes Benz? A DNF in the world of Formula One means or could mean as much as 25 points. And we saw that happen last week in Barcelona with Kimi Antonelli with a mysterious problem in his car. And all of a sudden, from 68 points, it's now down to 43, I think. Hello, Delucia. Who's going to jump first, Toto Wolff or Fred Vasseur?
I think it's all Toto for this one. He's already come out and said, we need to try and figure out a way to work on team orders that's still fair because we've allowed the boys to race so far, but we also know that there is another team in the mix all of a sudden. And, they weren't too worried about Ferrari coming into the season. It was quite raising of their performances that they were the leaders of the pack and both their drivers had a chance to win. But now all of a sudden, we see Hamilton coming out of the woodworks and he is on his path to becoming an eight-time world champion with the way that he's currently driving. And Toto said, I don't want to race against Hamilton because I know the caliber of the driver that he is. And once he switches into that mindset, there is no stopping him whatsoever. And if Mercedes continue to battle it out, yes, we enjoy seeing it on track between Kimi and George. What ends up happening is you're sacrificing a victory and you, instead of turning it to the people behind you, they're going to benefit and your team's going to suffer. So now that there's a different team in the mix, I think this is the chance for Toto Wolff to step up and say, right, well, Kimi's leading, you have to look at it from a situational point of view. It makes sense to protect that position because we know that Ferrari are bringing even more upgrades this weekend in Austria. They are, improving the engine and bringing in quite a few different toys to play with. And I think that where Ferrari is headed, it does look like they're in to battle out with the Mercedes quite quickly.
Yeah, if we look at it, and I mean, I would never ever discount someone like Max Verstappen, but being over 100 points behind, you've got a little bit of a problem. In my opinion, it's basically a five-way run at this stage. You've got Lewis Hamilton, you've got Kimi Antonelli, you've got George Russell, and don't discount Leclerc or Lando Norris. McLaren, yes, they've got to fight, but Lando is a world champion. And it's incredible how world champions all of a sudden accumulate points, even when times are tough. And we're seeing that with Lewis Hamilton, of course, because he always just he's there to pick up everything. And out of those top five, there are only two world champions. And of course, Lewis Hamilton has got seven of those already. So George Russell doesn't have one. Antonelli is just a young, bright kid. Leclerc can only blame himself because he should be on roughly the same amount of points as Lewis Hamilton. But his own mistakes have cost him. So Ferrari are one who are going to say if Leclerc doesn't all of a sudden go out and get a victory or two, then they're going to have to sit and say, okay, we're backing Lewis Hamilton. And then, of course, as you mentioned, Toto Wolff has now got to sit there and try and manage these two guys who both want to go and become world champions. And George Russell, in a way, feels that it's his right to get a Formula One world champion. Doesn't work that way, unfortunately. But if Antonelli continues the way that he has been and take away the DNF, he managed to pass George Russell on the track, showed that he was quick, and then all of a sudden his car didn't work. I still think Mercedes are very, very much in this championship, but the way that Ferrari are going at the moment, and with perhaps an extra 10, 15 horsepower going to Austria, Mercedes are the ones that have to really, really be cautious to sit there and play the correct game. If they start implementing do not fight each other right now, this is going to backfire on them. They've got to let their guys go. There's still 15 races. There's still a long, long way to go. So I would be cautious in implementing anything just yet. However, if they may be sitting in second and third position, it might be one of those prudent conversations to have to the drivers over the radio saying, hold position, bring back the points.
And I think it is entirely situational. If you look at the last race, for example, in Barcelona, when the two of them were squabbling, it was quite clear for all of us to see that Kimi was quicker than George, and he had more of an opportunity to go after Hamilton. And I think in that situation, in order to mitigate that, yes, Kimi did end up overtaking him, but then had that blackout in electrical power. I think that in that situation, it's one of those things where Mercedes can step in and say, right, let Kimi through, carry on, don't race, because Leclerc or whoever was in fourth is catching up. So it's all about those kind of situations that I think Mercedes can implement. They're no strangers to having intra-team dynamics like this. So I think learning from the lessons from last time out, I think that it's very important for them to do that now. But I think if you look at all the teams, I mean, Red Bull as well, they're bringing some upgrades this weekend as well. And it's been quite a rough start for Verstappen and Hajar to come into the season. But at the same time, they're going to their home race. They're in Austria, and it's the first time they're doing so with their own engine. I think for the last 2 decades, you've seen Red Bull racing with Renault and then Honda. And I think in the 20 years and so that they've been together, this is the first time we're really getting to see them bring their own power unit to their own home circuit. So I'm quite curious to see how that goes, because Austria is not always the easiest circuit. It's almost like a race of two halves. You have these extreme straight line speeds in the beginning, and then all of a sudden you have these high speed corners. So I'm very curious to see how they're going to go on, because, like you said, Verstappen's also one of those points who, yes, one of those drivers who, yes, he is 100 points behind, but he's made that up before. Last year is a prime example of that, having to collect points when your other drivers on the grid are squabbling. And, with Piastri and with Lando, the same thing happened at Austria last year where they were battling. And I think that if anyone is going to collect points, it is going to be Verstappen in comparison to the Ferraris and the Mercedes. So I think this weekend, we're still very early on in the season. We are so early on in the season, and I think anything can happen. There's changes to the different ratio to electrical power and to the internal combustion engine. So I don't know. I feel a little bit nervous to see what's going to happen, but very, very excited to see how all the teams are going to fare in comparison to one another.
Yeah, listen, it's the Red Bull Ring. It's the home of Red Bull. It's going to be a magic event as always. And you've got to believe that Leclerc wants to get into this battle. He knows that this car is good, so he has to beat Lewis Hamilton. You've got George Russell, who knows that they've got a very good Mercedes Benz. He has to beat Kimi Antonelli. And then in the background, you got Max Verstappen saying, "Let them squabble. Bang, I'll come. Bang, I'll come." And the better the better that Red Bull gets, the more points all of a sudden, it's going to accumulate. And I mean, we could come down to a 6-way battle, and that is hoping that all of the teams do improve relatively to each other, that we don't have this huge disparity. If you look at the first couple of races this year, of course, it's just been Mercedes all of the way. Now, Ferrari seem to have done something, but it could have been just a runaway Mercedes year. And we're hoping that all of a sudden McLaren up their game. Ferrari, we've seen, are definitely improving. We need Red Bull to improve, because that's what we want. We want 4 teams or 5 teams battling out a championship, as opposed to, oh well, we're just going to watch Antonelli and Russell race each other, and as we saw from 2014, that's not the kind of racing that we want to see. So it's going to be a fascinating this weekend. McLaren dominated last year here. They are definitely improving. However, Mercedes and Ferrari look extremely competitive, and more than likely going to be locking out that front row. And then, of course, yes, you've got the Max factor. You've got Hajar also has been very, very impressive. And watch out for Racing Bulls. This is also a home race for them. So those are the ones to watch out for. I haven't checked out what the weather's going to be like, but it can be very changeable in the Austrian mountains. So I think we're in for something fascinating, and yet another little turn of the wheel in this new regulation change, where we haven't been very happy with it. However, we are still seeing a great championship developing.
In Austria this weekend, the weather's going to be very hot. They're currently experiencing a heat wave at the moment. So no rain on track for
Excellent.
us, but you never know what's going to happen. Sometimes, just want to spring out there, but it's 36 degrees, Sash. So it's going to be quite a
Oh,
tough race for the drivers. It's going to be murderous, and you're in the middle of nowhere pretty much. So I think it is going to be interesting to see how people are going to fare. The other team I'm really excited for is Alpine. I think if you have Alpine and Racing Bulls, the two of them together have really surprised me this weekend, this past season, because I didn't expect either of them to do as well as they have. And I think Liam Lawson, Arvid Lindblad have found their stride just as much as Gasly and Colapinto have. I think the four of them really have just found some really great momentum. And with the way their teams are, for a track like Austria, they should do quite well. I think particularly with the Racing Bulls, Liam Lawson did such a beautiful interview, and he was talking about his journey into getting into Formula One. And you know, when you always peel back the curtain and peer into someone's life, you almost gain a new kind of respect for them. He did such a great interview explaining the sacrifices that his parents had made, and to
Mm.
understand where he is now. He said that he feels far more comfortable with his position. I think when he first came to Formula One, there's automatically that pressure of, you know, you're in the racing, you're in the Red Bull seat. There's so much pressure on you. And now that he's in Racing Bulls and he can have a more laid back approach, it kind of feels like he can rather work on the consistency. And we've seen in the past, consistency is what gets you very far in Formula One. And if you're able to clinch those points, that's so important. So I'm looking forward to seeing the little battle between Alpine and Racing Bulls while the others squabble in the front.
Yeah, I think we're in for a really, really exciting Austrian Grand Prix. And yes, it is difficult to overtake in Austria as well, but there are opportunities. And with this hot weather that Delucia has wonderfully predicted, we definitely will see an alternative kind of strategy. There definitely will be changes. We saw an alternative strategy from Ferrari in Barcelona. The virtual safety car, I don't think would have made any difference. But they were aggressive and they were very, very clinical in their strategy. And I think we might see something like that this weekend in Austria as well. So it's not going to just be a traditional. Here we go, one stop at lap 24, and then the next stop at lap 40 something or whatever. I think tire degradation is definitely going to play a huge factor this coming weekend. So all very, very exciting. Let's look a little bit at the back of the grid. The likes of a Cadillac, they are on their own little trajectory and they seem to be happy with where they are. But one has to bring up Aston Martin yet again. There's a lot of talk that everybody believes in what Newey is doing, and when it does click, it will click. Honda have said that they are very much committed to staying and helping develop this car. I don't know if this is their PR talk, but I struggle to find in all of the years of knowing something that this is going to turn around magically. I just somehow don't see a massive step forward until probably the last 5-6 races, and there when I'd say a turnaround, probably besides being 4 seconds off the pace, that might be 2.5 seconds or 3 seconds off the pace. I don't see anything miraculous happening.
I mean, I don't either. I wish I could drink from whatever juice the Aston Martin team are in terms of patience, because I certainly don't have as much patience as they do to wait for everything to come together. And I think that if you look at the way it's been structured, maybe they did go back after their drivers were so critical of the team to do a whole PR revamp and be super diplomatic in their responses. But the bottom line is Aston Martin is struggling internally and it's coming out externally. How we're seeing them perform on track and the lack of zest and energy in the team. And you would think with a driver like Fernando Alonso, much like Lewis has done with Ferrari, to add your own experience, your own knowledge on the sport, and to try and boost the morale of others around you. But at the same time, I can also understand that when things are so broken, how do you fix it when you run out of super glue? You know, and that enough is not strong enough to hold everything together. I think with Aston Martin, as it stands right now, it's in a condition of we're critical but we're stable, because we're not at the back of the pack. We at least have a point in comparison to our other back markers, but you know we're there. We're still in the mix, but we're not going to compete as much as we need to stay alive, and that's fairly disappointing for a team like Aston Martin, who 2 3 years ago they were battling out in front, getting podiums weekend after weekend with Fernando Alonso. At one point we thought he was going to win a race, you know. So that's that for me, that downfall of where they were back then to where they are now, it needs to be studied, because I'm really just trying to get my head around the fact that you can hire an insane amount of talent, of geniuses that you cannot bring together and build an extraordinary car. because those are resources that other teams pray and hope for. And yeah, they are in your corner, but it's just not materializing. So, I mean, I want to be excited for them, but my hope is that Cadillac might just improve a bit more than them, even though they're an island on their own.
Yeah, no, they also, yeah, they're out at sea. Let's put it that way. They're in a strait somewhere, and they just got to find which direction to steer the boat at the moment. Does Cadillac? And there's been a lot of rumor about Bottas and Perez, but at this stage, it makes no sense to even change any of those two drivers. They've got to have a much more competitive car. And then, of course, if the one is way faster than the other one, then of course maybe you look at changing drivers. But at this stage, they've got to just work exceptionally hard to try and figure out where they're going wrong and where they're going right. And I think some of it may have to do with the lack of power from the Ferrari engine. So now with the upgraded engine, we might see a much more competitive Cadillac, and hopefully we also see a much more competitive Haas car, because they also have been struggling with straight line speed, and they want to be racing with racing bulls. They don't want to be Aston Martin, Cadillac, Haas. They want to be up there with Alpine. They want to be up there with Racing Bulls, and hopefully with this upgraded Ferrari engine, which of course, they will get. It'll definitely lift their spirits.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, the other team we have to talk about is Williams. They have really been struggling. And if you cast your mind back to last year in Austria, Carlos Sainz didn't even get off with the formation lap. I remember he was stuck on the grid, and then when he'd gone into the pit, the brakes had just gone on fire. And I'm hoping that this will not be the case this weekend for them, because they've also just been struggling. It's been setback after setback. And there are now rumors of silly season beginning. Is Carlos Sainz going to leave Williams? And who's going to replace him? Where is he going to go? Because if you remember, Sash, when it was first announced that Ferrari had let him go, there were rumors swirling that he was going to go maybe back to Red Bull, maybe to Audi. His dad tried to convince him to go to Audi and said, just suffer for the year. And just remember that when they come in, they're going to have an incredible car. And, he was with Williams last year getting podiums, but now they're just struggling to stay afloat. So with Williams, again, another team that we had a lot of high hopes for, two fantastic drivers, but it just hasn't been able to really get into it. And the problem with Austria and the Red Bull Ring where we're racing this weekend, it is quite a meticulous track, and it does require a lot of straight line speed. It does require balanced car, and I don't think that the Williams have that. It's almost a worry if they are battling in the race and they can finish, that will be a win for them. But I think with where they are, it's just been bad luck after bad luck for them.
Yeah, very much so. And you know what? I mean, of course, everyone wants to drive for Mercedes, for McLaren, for Ferrari, for Red Bull, because those are the top four teams. But if I was a driver right now, I'd be knocking on the door of Audi. End of story. We spoke about it last week. That this is a team that, yes, it's their first year. They have a huge inventory of motorsport knowledge. They they are doing a much better job than anybody else, in my opinion. And I'm including the likes of Williams, who have been in Formula One, the second oldest team. So if I was a driver like Carlos Sainz and there was an opportunity, I would jump at it right now, because as much as we have been so positive towards Williams, they just do not seem to improve. They go one step forward, two steps back, one step forward, two steps back. So they're, in my opinion, their progression is actually negative, which is so desperately sad, because I love the team, I love who's there, but there's just something that is not clicking at the moment. And I think there are a lot of people knocking on Audi's door to know that going forward, this is a team definitely for the future. The problem with Sainz is he's running out of time, and Audi more than likely will look for some kind of Germanic kind of driver. But because of Carlos Sainz Senior's relationship with Audi over all of the years, there might be an opening. Now, do they get rid of Bortoleto? Do they buy Hulkenberg out? Either way, it's going to be very expensive for Audi. But maybe put someone like Carlos Sainz in that car. and actually see what it can do. I think Bortoleto and Hulkenberg are doing an outstanding job, but I think Sainz could even be that 2 or 3 tenths quicker.
And the beauty of someone like Science is with every team he's been to, he's left the team in a better position than when he started. And he's always said that he's there for progress and to help build the team up. And if he can do that, he's happy. But at the same time, you're completely right. He is running out of time. He is nearing the 30-year-old mark. And I don't want to say that that's discriminatory towards him, because if you look like someone like Lewis and Fernando, even Hulkenberg in his late 30s, they are the older three gentlemen in the group and they're still driving phenomenally. Maybe not Alonso as much, but we see like glimpses of it. I think if you look at Hamilton, he's just an anomaly. But with science in particular, I just hope that Williams somewhere somehow can wrap their head around their myriad of issues, and if not coming back stronger in the latter half of the season, at least making progress so that next year we can start on a clean slate.
Okay, so this week, Austria. Wow, looking forward to it. The Red Bull Ring, of course, we expect a lot from Max. He didn't have a great race here last year. McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, Delucia. I'm putting you on the spot. Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, Russell Antonelli. Give me your top. Give me your positions of those 4 drivers.
Oh, so it's such a tough one because I don't think that anyone can predict exactly what's going to happen. But in terms of where I think everyone's going to be, I have a feeling Kimi Antonelli is going to pull one out of the bag, maybe redeem himself from knocking Max Verstappen out last year. So I think Kimi Antonelli for me is going to be on top. I'm going Lewis Hamilton for second. And then in third, I'm actually going to put a McLaren driver in there because McLaren seems to be stealing a podium here or there. So I'm going to go with Lando Norris because he had an exceptional race last time out when we went Barcelona, and he had a great race there last year. So those are my top 3. Who's yours?
I'm going with Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, Kimi Antonelli, and Max Verstappen.
Wow. You're going straight in with a Ferrari 1-2 Sash and Leclerc to win. I love your optimism, but if you nail that, you'll be the richest man on earth.
Well, listen, we will reconvene next time and we'll see how close either one of us got.
Yes, absolutely. Deal.